something to be said about realizing the importance of creativity within humanity. And in fact, I think they're synonymous, and without one, you don't have the other. And by that I mean, to be human means we are to create. It's what we do. And by create, that can be so many different things. I don't just mean artistry, whether it's music, painting, literature, that sort of thing, or dance. But it can be things like building, just creating something of your own, even cooking. You know, something that you're passionate about, that you put your hand to, that you make, that's for you and those you care about. That's real creativity. And I just wanted to have a discussion about how important I feel that is, and how lost it's become in modern day. Our society struggles to really align with the creative space now, and I think the real feel behind it has just been lost. It's just not, just doesn't feel quite right if it's there at all. So I'd like to take you back on a journey to my childhood and your childhood, by all means. But if you think back to when we were a kid, our level of imagination, our desire to just invent things on the fly and have fun, it just came so naturally, and it knew no bounds, right? It was endless. I can actually pull these up a bit, seeing as the sun's gone down. Oh well, it's going behind cloud. Found a new little spot here actually, very beautiful. Plenty of wildlife. And so when we're a child, we don't put any, I guess, thresholds or create any form of barriers in regards to our imagination and what we can achieve and what we do. And that's an amazing thing. We're born like that, right? And it's only as we start getting older that we come to realize, or we're told that we should realize, that it becomes childish behavior to just imagine and play. And I want to challenge that, because I disagree with it. So even though as a child, whilst our imagination has boundless limits, well, boundless limits, it's just boundless, it has no limits. Even at that point at school, we're led to believe that life and society as we know it pans out a certain way. So we're children for a time, we play, but we learn, we gain an education. We then may leave school, we may get further education, but ultimately we end up working for a living. We settle down, we buy a house, white picket fence, that whole scenario. That's a real simplified version, but that's pretty much what we're led to believe is the norm, or it was when I was a kid. And so if you think back, you can, for me, I can't put a specific time frame on this, but I'm sure that when I heard that at school, or however I've heard that, I've gone home, I've looked at family, I've looked at the structures of family in general, other people's mums and dads, and a common theme, not always, I mean it's different for different families, but more often than not, it's a working family, or at least one working mum or dad in the family. And if they're not working somewhere for somebody, they're coming home to then have to work to the upkeep of the house and looking after the family, and that's just what they did. And so as a kid, you kind of look back at that. If I look back on that now, I'd go, I don't want to be a grown-up anytime soon. I don't want to be an adult. That's not fun. And I have to agree, 100%. There's far less fun in being an adult when you look at it that way. than there is or was being a child. Now I want to give you some examples though of this untethered approach to creativity and imagination that we had as kids, right? So there was a time in primary school, I would have been about 8, and where I grew up in those days, accessing school grounds was fine during holidays, and after school it was just open. Yes, there was a fence line in there, but it wasn't as secure as what most schools have become today. And it was common that kids from around the local neighbourhood would go there to play. And so anyway, during school holidays once, and it was common for schools to bring in skip bins and get rid of a whole lot of, I guess general waste or whatever it was through the year or through that term or semester. They'd get rid of that. And as kids, we were frolicking around one of these skip bins and found these massive plastic bags. They would have been like, I don't know, like bin liners, but of a giant nature, at least for 8-year-olds, and, heavy grade or thick grade. And it was a windy day. And we had this random idea of going down into what we called the hollow. There was this hollow area, which was the main playground. You had these different things to climb over and jump off. And in those days, they were pretty tall. There was lots to jump off, and you only had the ground to land on. And we had what we called the tower. It was, when you're a kid, to us, we'd go, oh, it's 2 or 3 stories high. But in reality, as an adult, it's probably only like a story high. Still high, considering that it's just grass to fall on. And we had this idea that we were going to take these bags, run up this tower, and jump off it at that height, at the full height, and try and catch the wind in these bags. Sort of brace our fall, and if anything, maybe float in the air for a little bit. I was the first one to try it, and I jumped off. I landed okay. Yes, the bag filled up with air. Did it really do anything? Not really, but I wasn't sure, and I sort of, called up to my mates back at the top of the tower. I said, yeah, you feel like you float a bit, I think. Then my mate Tony was next, and so he jumps off, bag inflates, lands pretty much the same way as I did from what I could see. But he was a bit more honest, and he gets up and he says, no, I don't think it really does much, And then Paul was next, and he jumped off, and man, he just looked awkward. But the way he landed so how we landed, we'd land in a way where our legs were partly bent, and you go with the landing and roll if you had to, right? He was just lock-legged, flat foot, jarred on the ground, and he yelled out. We honestly thought he'd broken a bone or something, or busted his knee or whatever it was, because he got up, he actually went down, and he was holding his leg, and we thought, oh no, what's he done? Turns out it was just, a bit of a shock from being so flat. He had major pain in his left foot with the way he'd jarred and landed, which is, common when you're jumping from a height and not landing properly. And of course, we're barefooted. And anyway, and so what did we learn? Well, we learned that the bags did absolutely nothing. But what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that we found something at random through adventure, right? Through just wanting to be in the moment. And not that I'm condoning going fishing through rubbish bins or what have you. Keep in mind that these were skip bins, but these are this is not like food or waste or anything. These are just like art materials and stuff like that that get thrown in these bins and some old furniture. And so we found these bags, and we just came up randomly with this idea of making this game or this event out of it. Yes, a little bit high risk, I guess, Thankfully, no one came out with broken bones. And as it would turn out, it was a fun game. We learned how to jump and roll. We taught Paul, we said, look, you got to sort of like have your knees sort of half cocked like this, and forward momentum allow you to roll, and you'll be fine every time. And we're jumping off, yahooing, doing stupid things, stars in the sky, whatever you want to do, we did it. And we created that game. We created that time, that memory. Brilliant. There's another time, a bit later in life. So from 8, let's jump to 14. I think I was about that anyway. And I became friends through a mutual friend that I've had friends with for a while, for a number of years, probably since I was around 10. And anyway, my mate Shannon introduced me to another friend, Sean. And he lived a considerable distance from where I was, and the kids that I grew up in that previous story were just neighbourhood kids. This guy, Sean, lived a fair distance, a bike ride. You could walk there, but it'd take you probably a good 3 hours to get there. So biking distance, push bike. And anyway, I think it was only the second time I met him, he was telling us a story about how behind him in just an abandoned, well, it's just a bit of bush really, looked unkept from the outside, so it looked quite dense. And he said in the middle of there's an abandoned school. And we're like, what? We knew the area. I didn't go, there was a school close to where he was, an actual school running. It's Mount Primary. I went to another school called Amanu further, back a bit, and there were others even further back from there. So we thought we knew all the schools. It's like, what an abandoned school. So again, instantly, even at 14, you've got this adventurous nature to go, wow, let's go and have a look. Because we asked him questions, and this guy was quite a bit reserved. He hadn't actually gone out and done any real deep investigating from it. Like he'd gone in and he'd gone, yeah, because it was heavily overgrown. And he thought, no, I'm not going too further into there. And as a group, there was 4 of us at the time, 6 of us the second time. And we went into this bush to investigate this abandoned school. And sure enough, here was a tiny old primary school still sitting there. As you could imagine, there were holes in the there were only a few buildings. So we're talking pretty old, they were pretty small. So there were 3 buildings. One was completely had gone over, and so there was slab under it. You could walk on top of what was the fallen building. The other 2 were still standing, but gutted, and holes through walls and ceiling and everything. But mostly through natural sort of wear and tear for the environment it was in and the overgrown nature and trees and branches and all of that sort of stuff. Not through any form of vandalism really. So there was no spray paint or anything over anything. It had honestly just been forgotten about and was in a part of our town that we didn't even know existed until we met this guy. And so we went around, the tennis courts were still all intact. Well, not with the net, but the caging around the outside. Swimming pool still there, caging around there. And you could use your imagination to picture like where the pathways were, even though they were cracked and grass was growing out of it and trees up in the middle of nowhere, or in the middle of what would be like little maybe driveways or whatever. I didn't even know if they had driveways back then, but they were bits of concrete with trees coming out, split. And we thought, this is just an amazing place, and no one knew about it. And it wasn't while we were actually there, but it was later that evening, because it was like school holidays and a weekend, I believe, and we got pizza, and this guy Sean's place ended up being quite a major go-to in the end because of not only that school, but it just became a good place to congregate. His mum was really cool, and it's just, didn't mind there being a whole troop of blokes walking into this, or young lads walking into this house. But we were talking over pizza, and we thought, when we just thought of this game of our own version of sort of like paintball or paint tag using water pistols, food dye, and white coloured shirts that we picked up from the local op shop. So dirt cheap to make this vision happen. All of us were on board with it. We all had our own colours that we had. Obviously, you'd catch the dye on the shirt would represent a point for that person. What was really cool was in that school, that abandoned school, there were actually still taps there that functioned. So you can imagine like old brass taps, and town water obviously is what it was using, and they still function. And so we had access to water to refill, and hopefully it was clean water because we drank out of it too, but water to refill our wood pistols, and just great. And again, it's adventure, it's imagination, and it's play, it's creativity. We made something of our own. And then after that, it starts fading away. I had other creative things, especially with music. I used to love like singing. I don't know that I can sing, but sing and play the guitar. And then pretty much as soon as kids entered my life, my first child was when I was 24. That's when I shelved that. After a few more years, I actually sold my acoustic guitar. I had no need for it, I didn't think. And if and when I wanted to go back to playing the guitar, I'd just pick up a new one. And lo and behold, I'm now 49, and I've only now gotten back into the creative space. Not in playing a guitar, but in recording video, creating film, which is what I'm doing here, sharing stories, life experiences. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this and share those stories is I'd just love for you in your own time is to take what I've shared as a story as an example. Reflect on your own childhood, what you used to get up to, right up until your 20s. What did you used to love doing? And what have you also shelved in that creative space that you used to love? By doing that, and that's what I ended up doing, it's like my children had grown. That was my positive distraction for 25 years with my girls, seeing them grow. My youngest one just graduated from high school last year. And so that's when that gap starts to come about, and what came about in my life because of that. I was distracted by and the best distraction you could ever want, by the way, being a dad. But they're grown, they've got lives of their own now. And one's got a child of their own. I'm a granddad, and so things change. And I realized that used to be a part of me, that creative desire, that element. And I wanted it back. Not necessarily the guitar playing as such, or going out and playing with water pistols. I used to sort of do that stuff with my kids anyway, not with coloured dye and white shirts and make it competitive, but it was, I'd still play with my kids doing stuff like that. And I'd like you to think about what you can do, because I think it's something that's a necessity. I honestly think it's really needed. Benefit for our own health, our mental health especially, to make something and get into the habit of having something that's yours, your own, whatever that is. It can be, get into welding, make yourself a little bench, get into wood turning, make yourself a little timber bowl, cooking, whatever it is. Even if it is to do with the arts, whether you wanted to pick up painting, music, poetry, literature, it's endless as to what you can do that's a form of creating that is yours, something you build. Now, I can't definitively say this is a cause or a precursor to these degenerative mental illnesses that humankind suffers from, especially these days, namely Alzheimer's and dementia. So there's no scientific research here. I'm just shooting off the cuff. But it's quite plausible or possible that losing touch with our inner child, our creativity, our imagination, and our passion for that and play, losing that could in effect be something that maybe not a cause, but maybe aids the degeneration of our brain, our mind. And so, but even if it's not, it's still hugely recommended by me. I'm an advocate for it. Go and create something. Try different things. I'm not just going to be creating video. In fact, even though I'm creating film and video, I'm actually trying different ways of doing it. This is the first time I've been here. I found this awesome little space. It's really windy today, but I'm surrounded by a copse of trees. I'll do a scan around when I've finished this video to give you sort of a view of what this looks like around where I am. It's not completely off the beaten track, but it's kind of, it's inset. So there are houses around the back there. There's somewhat of a mainish road there. I wouldn't say it's a main road, there's a road there. It's heavy with traffic at the moment because of school. Yeah, it's getting towards the end of school. But yeah, and the water around me is like a dam that's been long created, and the wildlife here is beautiful. I've seen plenty of birds while I've been talking to you, of all sizes and shapes and colours and sounds. So that's something I do. That's my change, and I love this. Getting back to nature, what an excuse, what a reason. I just love it. And this in itself is also a form of art for me. So I'm in the middle of it, and I'm going to show you, but we've got like, I don't know if that was a planned portion of the dam, because there's trees in the middle of it that have died. And there are some here, yeah, so it must have been. But there's trees that must have survived over however many years it's been around for, but then have died. But the skeleton of these trees is still in the middle of this waterway. It's really quite eerie, but awesome at the same time. So go and find something for you to do. Just take some time to think about it. Do me a favor and just commit to doing that. And you won't regret it. I can't see you turning around going, you know, I don't need to hone back into my creative side. I don't think you'll do it, because it feels too human. It feels like it's something we're supposed to have and be a part of and do. So, yeah, but thank you for being here. My name's Carl, and yeah, this is me. I help those that feel anxious find their creative journey, I guess, or help them on their creative journey. That's what I want to do. It doesn't have to be creating film on YouTube. It can be anything, especially those that are in their stage of life like me, so 40 plus, that find a number of things that can just sort of get in the way, and we feel a bit anxious about doing things, might feel silly. Don't let it stop you. You know, life's too short, and we should be realizing how short it is now that we've got more days behind us as we do ahead of us. That's how I see it anyway. So love having you here. Thank you very much for being here and watching my film for what it's worth. Hopefully you got something out of that and feel invigorated to go and find your creative outlet, your creative passion. If this resonated with you, I mean, you know what to do, and you want to support me, you know, please do. It all goes a long way to helping the channel keep on keeping on. And until next time, look after yourself. I will do a quick scan of the area too. I'll let you see it. It's beautiful, actually.